not a city in the way you understand one, not a chaotic sprawl like Babylon or a fortress like Sardis, but something more deliberate, more spacious. This is Pasargadae, the heart of a burgeoning power, a place that is more an idea than a settlement. You guide your donkey past a work crew of Medes and Lydians, their languages mingling in the dry air as they heave a block of pale limestone into place. Their foreman, a broad-shouldered Persian, doesn't shout or whip them, but rather gestures and speaks with a tone of shared effort. It's the first of many things you find strange. You see gardens being laid out, irrigated by canals that channel precious water with impossible precision, making the arid land bloom. This is a capital built not just for defense, but for beauty. You find a place at a caravanserai, a bustling nexus of cultures. Over a bowl of barley stew and flatbread, you listen. A merchant from Ecbatana complains about the new standardized weights, yet admits they make trade fairer. A Babylonian scribe, his face etched with weary surprise, speaks of the new king who conquered his city not with fire and sword, but with a promise. He talks of a cylinder inscribed with a decree from this king, Cyrus, declaring that all captured peoples were free to return to their homes and worship their own gods. You almost choke on your stew. Such a thing is unheard of. Conquest means enslavement, destruction, and the imposition of new gods. It is the law of the world, or it was. A new energy sweeps through the encampment. Hoofbeats, the jangle of harnesses. A procession is arriving. It isn't a grand display of looted wealth. Instead, it is Cyrus himself, returning from a tour of his new domain. He rides a sturdy Nicean horse, his clothes practical, his beard neatly oiled, but unadorned with the ostentatious jewels of other kings. He dismounts and speaks not only to his generals, but to the stonemasons, the canal diggers, even the foreign merchants. He listens. Your eyes, accustomed to the bowed heads and fearful silence that greet other rulers, watch in disbelief as people speak to him with a respect born not of terror, but of genuine admiration. You are witnessing the birth of a new philosophy of power. This isn't just a Persian empire, it is an empire of many peoples, governed by a king who sees strength in diversity, not weakness. As the sun sets, casting long purple shadows from the Zagros Mountains, your gaze falls upon a stepped stone structure being built on a secluded part of the plain. It is simple, elegant, and strong. You know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that you are looking at the future tomb of the man who is changing the world. You are a single anonymous thread, but you are here, woven into the very beginning of a grand and beautiful tapestry. The seasons have turned many times since you stood on that plain. The tomb you saw being built now holds the body of the great unifier, and the world he forged has already been tested by fire. His son Cambyses conquered the ancient land of Egypt, but died on his return, leaving a vacuum filled by a Magian usurper and a year of bitter civil war. The dream of the empire flickered,
threatening to die with its founder. But it did not. Now you stand on a vast terrace carved from the stone heart of the Mountain of Mercy, and the dust you breathe is not from a temporary camp, but from the creation of a new, monumental heart for the world, Parsa, which the Greeks will one day call Persepolis. The scale is beyond comprehension. Legions of workers swarm the site. You hear the sharp Lydian tongue of master carvers, the rhythmic chanting of Babylonian bricklayers, and the gruff commands of Median foremen. You are older now, your hands calloused from years of labor, and you spend your days hauling water for the men who turn rock into lace.
This is not the simple, earnest construction you witnessed at Pasargadae. This is a declaration. This is power made manifest. The name on everyone's lips is Darayavaush, Darius. He is the man, a distant kinsman of Cyrus, who seized the throne, crushed the rebellions, and is now binding the vast territories together, not just with a vision, but with sinews of stone and iron. You feel the change in tangible ways. Your meager wages are no longer paid in measures of grain, but in new, heavy coins of silver and gold, each stamped with the figure of the king as a royal archer. They are called dareks, and they are good from the shores of the Aegean to the dusty plains of the Indus. You watch the royal couriers of the Angarium, the express post, thundering past on the newly completed royal road. They say a message can now travel across the empire in a week, a journey that once took 3 months. It is a system of speed and control that shrinks the world. One afternoon, your work takes you near the grand ceremonial staircase of the Apadana, the great audience hall. Here, under the shade of giant, half-finished bull-headed capitals, you see the empire's philosophy being etched into eternal life. A procession of figures is being carved in low relief, a frozen parade of humanity. You run a hand over the rough, unfinished limestone, tracing the outlines. There are Ethiopians with ivory tusks, Scythians in their pointed hats leading a stallion, Ionians carrying vessels, and Indians with jars of precious gold dust. They are not depicted as slaves in chains. Each delegation is rendered with dignity, clothed in their native dress, bringing the finest products of their homeland as gifts, not as plunder. This is the tribute of a family of nations. Cyrus dreamed this empire into being with words and magnanimity. Darius is building it an indestructible body. He is carving that dream into the very mountains, creating a house for all nations, and ensuring that every soul within it, from the humblest water carrier to the most powerful satrap, knows their place within the grand ordered design. The years settle like fine dust on the rising columns of Persepolis. The city is no longer a chaotic construction site, but a place of awesome, burgeoning reality. The rhythm of your life is set by the overseer's call, the chip of the mason's hammer, and the weight of finished stone. The empire feels eternal, unshakable, its order as divinely ordained as the course of the sun. But the world is larger than this mountain terrace. The first change is a whisper, carried on the dry wind along with the scent of distant lands.
It comes from merchants whose caravans are delayed, from soldiers rotating back from the western satrapies. The word is Ionia. You have seen the Ionians carved on the great staircase, carrying their fine cloths and metalwork. They are part of the family. Yet the word is now spoken with a nervous edge, coupled with another, revolt. At first, it is a distant problem, an irritation on the far skin of the empire. What are the squabbles of a few sea-trading cities to you here at the unshakable heart of the world? But the whispers grow louder. They speak of cities in rebellion, of Persian garrisons overwhelmed. Then, one sweltering afternoon, the rhythm of work is broken. A rider from the Angarium arrives, his horse lathered to a foam, its sides heaving. He does not carry a routine dispatch, he carries disaster. The news spreads from the royal court to the barracks and finally to the workers' quarters like a fever. Sardis, the rich, powerful capital of the Lydian satrapy, has been burned. Not just attacked, but sacked and set ablaze by the Ionian rebels and their allies. Allies? That is the new, venomous word that poisons the air. You hear scribes speaking in hushed, angry tones of men from across the sea, from a place called Athens. Who are these Athenians? They are not part of the empire. They are outsiders who dared to cross the water and set fire to a city of the great king. The insult is unimaginable. It is a direct challenge not just to the king's power, but to the divine order he represents. The mood on the terrace shifts overnight. The confident pride in your work is sharpened with a grim purpose. The great halls you are building are no longer just a monument to peace, but a statement of power that must be projected, a throne from which vengeance will be declared. You see it in the eyes of the immortal guards who patrol the perimeter, their grip tighter on their spears. You hear it in the clang of forges working late into the night, shaping not decorative gates, but the tools of war. Spearheads, arrowheads, the bosses of shields. The procession of tribute bearers you once admired for its depiction of unity now looks like a roll call of subjects whose loyalty is being tested. The empire is gathering its strength, drawing a deep, furious breath. One evening, you hear a royal proclamation read aloud. The King of Kings, Darius, has sworn an oath. He will not forget the Athenians. He has commanded a servant to remind him 3 times at every meal, "Master, remember the Athenians." A storm is gathering in the west, and you can feel its shadow stretching all the way here to the stone heart of Persia. The age of building is not over, but a new age, an age of war, is about to begin. The seasons turn, but the king's oath does not soften. The memory of Sardis is a hot coal that refuses to cool. Your own hands, once dedicated to shaping the calm visages of tribute bearers and the intricate folds of the great king's robes, are now put to a different task. You are carving warriors for the grand staircase of the Apadana. The immortals, rank upon silent rank, their spears held at the ready, their expressions set in unwavering loyalty. Each chip of stone feels heavier, each strike of the mallet a punctuation mark in a declaration of war. You are no longer just celebrating the empire's reach, you are etching its wrath into the very rock of the homeland. The worksite, once a symphony of chisels, hammers, and shouted instructions in a dozen tongues, now has a new, deeper rhythm. It is the rhythmic tramp of sandals on the royal road, a sound that begins at dawn and does not cease until well after dusk. From your perch on the half-finished terrace, you have a commanding view of the great artery of the empire, and what you see is a migration unlike any other. It is not a procession of gifts, but a river of men and steel flowing west. Day after day, the contingents arrive and depart. You see Medes in their round felt caps and scaled armor, their horses bred for the charge. Scythians from the steppes, their quivers heavy with bronze-tipped arrows, their faces weathered by the wind. Bactrians with their fearsome axes, and Egyptians in white linen kilts, carrying long spears and towering shields. The glint of sunlight on 10,000 spear points is blinding. The dust they raise is a constant haze on the horizon, a man-made storm cloud moving with grim purpose. This is the empire gathering its fist. You had carved its image in stone, but now you see the living, breathing reality, and it is more awesome and terrifying than you could have ever imagined. One afternoon, you recognize a man among a column of Persian infantry. It is Aresh, a quarryman with whom you once shared bread and water, a man whose laughter was as loud as the ringing of his sledgehammer. He is thinner now, his face hardened, and he carries a spear and a wicker shield. He does not see you. His eyes are fixed on the road ahead, on the unseen enemy hundreds of leagues away. The personal cost of the king's vengeance becomes suddenly, painfully clear. These are not just soldiers, they are stonemasons, farmers, and potters, their tools of creation exchanged for instruments of destruction. That evening, the wine tastes bitter. The familiar stars above Persepolis seem distant and cold. The city you are building is a promise of glory, but it is a promise that will be paid for. And you now know the currency is men like Aresh. The army is gone. The great river of men has flowed west, and the silence it leaves behind is a physical presence, a hollow ache in the air. The dust settles on the royal road, which now seems unnaturally wide and empty. The rhythmic tramp of a million sandals is replaced by the lone clatter of a courier's horse or the slow creak of a merchant's cart. The urgency has bled from Persepolis, replaced by a collective, anxious stillness. You return to the half-finished staircase of the Apadana, your hammer and chisel feeling clumsy in your hands. You are tasked with carving a procession of Lydian tributaries, their faces meant to show respectful awe. Before, you saw this as a celebration of the king's harmonious empire. Now, you see only the yoke. Each tap of the hammer against steel echoes in the quiet, and you cannot help but wonder where Arash is, and if he can hear the same sound made by a Greek blacksmith forging a blade meant for him. Months pass, measured in the slow creep of shadows across the terrace. Then, the first official news arrives. A rider, his clothes stiff with dust and sweat, brings a proclamation from the king's own scribes. Xerxes has done the impossible. He has bridged the Hellespont, yoking the seas of Europe and Asia. He has lashed the waves themselves for their insolence. A wave of triumphant pride sweeps through the city. Feasts are held, and extra wine is distributed to the workers. You drink with the others, but the toast to the king's glory feels hollow on your tongue. You stare into your cup and see not wine, but a dark, churning sea. More news follows, carried on the summer winds. Victories in Thrace, in Macedon. The northern Greek cities bend the knee without a fight. The great king's army is a force of nature, unstoppable. The carvings you work on seem to come to life. The empire of stone is being made real in flesh and blood. Yet, beneath the official pronouncements, other stories begin to circulate. They are not read from scrolls in the public square, but whispered in the sleeping quarters after the lamps are extinguished. They are fragmented tales brought by merchants and wounded soldiers sent back from the front. Tales of sweltering heat, foul water, and lands that resist the king's will with a startling ferocity. One evening, you hear a new word, whispered with a mixture of horror and reverence, Thermopylae. The official account, when it finally comes, is of a glorious victory. A treacherous mountain pass, blocked by a stubborn handful of Spartans, has been cleared. The way to Athens is open. But the whispers tell a different story. They speak not of a skirmish, but of a slaughter. 3 days of Persian bodies piling up in a narrow pass. They speak of the king's own guard, the immortals, being sent into the meat grinder. Arash's unit. No one says his name, but you hear it in the silence between their words. The official victory begins to feel like a carefully disguised wound, a festering injury deep in the empire's victorious heart. You look up at the stone immortals you helped carve on the palace walls, their faces calm and perfect in their eternal march. You now know the lie chiseled into that stone. The cost of glory is not serene. It is brutal, bloody, and it may have already claimed the laughing man you once knew. The hammer feels leaden in your grip. Each strike of the chisel against the limestone rings false, a hollow percussion in the dusty air. You were meant to be carving the intricate folds of a Median tribute-bearer's robe, but your eyes keep drifting to the long frieze of the immortals. Their stone faces are placid, their march eternal, but you see them differently now. You see the ghosts of those who fell at the hot gates, the truth of the butcher's bill hidden behind serene propaganda. The lie is in the stone, and your own hands help to carve it. Weeks later, a new proclamation thunders across the construction terraces. Athens has fallen. The heart of the Greek resistance, The city that aided the Ionian rebels and defied the will of Darius has been consumed by righteous fire. A roar goes up from the foreman, a practiced cheer echoed raggedly by the workers. A day of celebration is declared. Yet the joy feels thin, brittle. It lacks the unbridled pride of the earlier victories. The wine tastes sour, the celebratory meal like ash in your mouth. You slip away from the forced revelry, drawn down towards the lower city, to the sprawling caravanserai. Here, near the stables and the merchants' quarters, news is a different kind of currency, less polished but more valuable. Hiding in the shade of an awning, you listen to a pair of Tyrian sailors speaking in low, urgent tones to a Bactrian merchant. They speak of Athens. They confirm it was burned to its foundations. But they also speak of how the grand army marched into a hollow city. The Athenians had fled, evacuated their populace to a nearby island named Salamis. The great king had conquered an empty stage. The burning, they whisper, was not an act of supreme power, but of supreme frustration. A tantrum enacted on marble and wood because the enemy themselves had slipped through his grasp. The news sours the official victory completely. The empire had not broken the Athenian spirit, merely their houses. As this unsettling truth settles in your gut, the sailors' talk shifts. Their voices drop even lower. They speak of the sea. Xerxes, determined to crush the Greeks once and for all, had ordered his massive fleet to trap the smaller Athenian navy in the narrow straits by Salamis. The king had a golden throne set upon a hillside to watch his inevitable triumph. But their story is not one of triumph. It is one of chaos, of a blue channel choked with ships, of the massive, sluggish Persian triremes being unable to maneuver, becoming easy prey for the nimble Greek vessels. They speak of splintering wood, of panicked commands lost in the din, of thousands of men, Persians, Medes, Phoenicians, Egyptians, floundering in the wine-dark sea, dragged to the depths by their own armor. The unstoppable army was halted by water. Suddenly, the official proclamations from the palace cease. No heralds arrive to announce the next glorious victory. An unnatural quiet descends upon Persepolis, a heavy silence filled with unspoken questions. The work continues, but the rhythm is gone. Men glance nervously to the west, as if they can see past the Zagros mountains to that distant, treacherous sea. The empire, which once seemed as solid as the foundations beneath your feet, is now holding its breath. And as you stare towards the fading light, you see that dark, churning sea from your wine cup again. It is vast and terrifying, and somewhere in its depths, the fate of Arash and of the entire world you know is being decided. The days that follow are made of dust and apprehension. You chisel at the stone relief of a Median tribute bearer, but your hands feel clumsy, your focus fractured. The rhythm of the worksite, once a thunderous heartbeat of imperial ambition, is now a nervous, stuttering pulse. Foremen who once bellowed with pride now snap with frayed nerves. Every dropped tool, every sharp crack in a stone block makes men jump. The silence from the west is a physical presence, a heavy blanket smothering the city. Then the whispers find fertile ground in the quiet. They are not carried by official heralds, but by camel drivers and merchants arriving from Sardis. Their words are poison, spreading through the workers' quarters after dusk. They speak not of a strategic withdrawal, but of a desperate retreat, of the great king abandoning his main army in Greece under the command of his general Mardonius, while he himself fled back to the safety of Asia. They speak of a harrowing journey, of soldiers dying from disease and starvation, of bridges of boats destroyed by storms. Each story is a chisel blow against the grand monument of imperial invincibility. You try to dismiss it, you must. Arash is with Mardonius's army, the strong core force that will surely still crush the Greeks. He must be safe. You cling to this belief as you work, as you eat your meager rations, as you lie on your pallet at night, staring into the darkness. Weeks later, a proclamation finally arrives. You are summoned from the scaffolding and workshops, ordered to line the grand avenue leading to the gate of all nations. The great king is returning. There is no mention of victory parades or celebratory feasts. The order is stark, formal, a command, not an invitation. You stand with thousands of others under the unforgiving sun, your throat dry with more than just dust. You search the horizon, expecting the glint of 1,000 spears, the brilliant banners, the gilded chariots. What you see instead is a column of ghosts. The procession is a fraction of the one that departed. The men who march are gaunt, their armor battered, their eyes staring at nothing. The legendary immortals look weary, their steps heavy. There are no captive princes in chains, no wagons overflowing with Grecian gold. There is only dust and exhaustion. Your eyes scan the faces frantically, a desperate, sweeping gaze searching for your brother's familiar features among the ranks of the living dead. Each face is a stranger, a mask of hardship you cannot penetrate. And then you see him, not Arash, but the King of Kings. Xerxes is not in his magnificent chariot. He is on horseback, almost lost amongst his guardsmen. His shoulders are slumped, his magnificent beard seems to droop, and his eyes, visible for a brief moment as he passes, are not filled with divine fire, but with a cold, black rage. A rage born of humiliation. The man who lashed the sea and burned Athens has been defeated, and he has brought that defeat home with him. It is written on his face, in the gait of his horse, in the funereal silence of his return. And as you watch him disappear through the great gates, the fear in your gut solidifies into a cold certainty. The empire has a wound, and it is deep. The king's return is not followed by proclamations, but by silence. A heavy, unnatural quiet settles over the construction site at Persepolis. The rhythmic clang of hammers on stone, once a sound of glorious progress, now feels like a frantic attempt to drown out the unspoken truth. The overseers, who once strutted with the borrowed pride of an invincible empire, now stalk the scaffolding with frayed tempers, their voices sharp and brittle. They drive you and the other artisans harder, as if carving one more perfect lotus blossom or one more stoic warrior into the stone can somehow erase the humiliation etched on the king's face. Your own work becomes a torment. Each day you climb the scaffolding, your hands moving with the memory of their craft, but your mind is a storm. Every soldier you see, every guard patrolling the perimeter, sends a jolt of desperate hope and immediate dread through you. Is that him? Could he have returned with a different unit? The questions gnaw at you, hollowing you out from the inside.
You begin to haunt the makeshift encampments that have sprung up outside the city, where the tattered remnants of the army are quartered. The air here is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, herbal poultices, and cheap wine. Men with missing limbs and thousand-yard stares sit listlessly in the shade, their conversations muted, fragmented. You approach them hesitantly, the name Arash a lead weight on your tongue. You describe him, his height, the small scar above his left eye from a childhood fall, the way he laughed. Some shake their heads without meeting your eyes. Others offer vague condolences. No one knows him. Each denial is a small death, chipping away at the hope you cling to. One evening, as the sun bleeds across the horizon, you find an old maid nursing a bandaged arm. He listens patiently to your description, his eyes clouded with memory. "A spearman with the 10,000? He asks, his voice raspy. You nod, your heart hammering against your ribs. Brave men. They fought to the last at Plataea. He uses the past tense. Your stomach clenches. The Spartans, they are not men. They are wolves in bronze. We were surrounded. It was a slaughter." He fumbles inside his tunic and pulls out a small, crudely carved wooden bird, its wings slightly chipped. Your breath catches in your throat. You carved it for Arash on the day he left, a token to remind him of home. "A boy gave this to me," the Mede says softly, his gaze distant. "Told me if I made it back, I should find his brother, the stonemason. He said, 'Tell him I saw the sea.'" The soldier presses the small bird into your palm. It is impossibly light, yet it feels heavier than any stone block you have ever lifted. You cannot speak. You cannot breathe. The sounds of the camp fade into a dull roar. The world contracts to the piece of wood in your hand, a final, fragile message from a ghost. You walk back to your quarters in a daze, the wooden bird clutched in your fist. That night, sleep offers no escape. The next morning, you return to the Apadana staircase. You look at the relief you were carving, a line of immortals marching in perfect, eternal procession, their faces serene, their bodies whole. The lie of it sickens you. This monument is not for the living. It is a tomb,
and you are carving the epitaph for your brother and thousands like him. Your chisel feels cold and alien in your hand. The silence of the stone has found its way into your soul. For days you are adrift. You go through the motions of your work. Your hammer blows hollow and without purpose. The grand frieze of the Apadana is a mockery, a gallery of perfect lies. Each serene face you pass seems to stare through you, ignorant of the blood-soaked mud of Plataea. The weight of the wooden bird in your pocket is a constant physical anchor to your grief. One morning, you stand before a new section of the relief. A line of immortals, their bodies blocked out, their faces smooth, blank ovals of stone awaiting identity. An official passes by, marking your panel with a chalk X. Your next task. You are to give life to another anonymous hero, another cog in the glorious machine of the Achaemenid army. But the face that swims in your mind is not an anonymous hero. It is Arash. The way his brow would furrow in concentration. The slight hook in his nose you teased him about relentlessly. The small jagged scar that cut through his left eyebrow. A new fire, cold and sharp, burns in your chest. It is not the warmth of hope, but the ice of purpose. Your hand, steady now, selects a fine-pointed chisel. You will not carve an immortal. You will carve your brother. You begin. The other masons are a distant hum, their rhythmic tapping a world away. Your world is this single slab of limestone. Your first cut is not to shape the jaw or the cheekbones, but to trace that tiny, jagged line above the eye, the scar. It is an act of defiance, a rebellion in stone. It is the mark of a real man, not a myth. Every chip of stone that falls away is an exhalation of your sorrow. You carve the stubborn set of his jaw, the gentle curve of his lips that always seemed on the verge of a smile. Your tools are no longer alien. They are extensions of your memory, painting with percussion. Hours bleed into one another. The sun climbs, beats down, and begins its slow descent. You do not stop for water or rest. You are a conduit for a story that must be told, even if only the stone will listen. You pour every memory of him, the shared whispers in the dark, the laughter over a simple meal, the final, brave wave goodbye into the contours of that face. Finally, you lay down your tools. You step back, muscles screaming in protest. Before you, an immortal stands ready to march for his king into eternity. His face is strong, serene, perfect for the grand procession. But you see it. You see the faint, almost invisible scar. You see the ghost of a familiar smile. You see Arash. No one else will ever know. He is one among thousands, a single face in a stone legion. But you have given him his monument. You have etched his truth into the empire's grand lie. He is no longer a ghost carried on a soldier's dying breath. He is here, immortal in a way the King of Kings never intended. You reach into your tunic, your fingers finding the worn wood of the bird. Your tribute is complete. The air grows cool against your sweat-damp skin. The golden light of dusk bleeds across the terrace, turning the pale limestone the color of honey. One by one, the hammers fall silent, replaced by the shuffling of weary feet and the low murmur of men eager for their evening meal. You remain frozen before your work, a statue yourself. Every muscle in your back and arms screams, a burning protest against the long, static hours. Your eyes trace the line of the stone scar, now softened by the dying light, a secret only you can read. A heavy hand claps down on your shoulder, making you jolt. You spin around, your heart seizing in your chest. It is Fra Ortis, the master mason, his face a mask of stone dust and authority. His eyes, narrowed against the glare, are not on you, but on the relief. He is a man who sees flaws the way a hawk sees a field mouse, and your blood runs cold. "You linger, boy," he grunts, his voice like gravel. He leans closer, his gaze sweeping across the face you have carved. He runs a thick, calloused finger over the spear shaft, the precise folds of the tunic, the tight curls of the beard. You hold your breath, your knuckles white around the handle of your mallet. His finger pauses, hovering just below the left eye. This is it. He sees it, the infinitesimal imperfection, the mark of your defiance. But his finger moves on, tracing the jawline instead. "Good," he says, a rare and precious word from his lips. There is a spirit to this one, not just another copy. He looks ready to step from the stone. He straightens up, fixing you with a critical gaze. You have talent. Do not waste it on sentiment. The Empire has no need for feeling, only for perfection. He turns and walks away without another word, his heavy footsteps echoing on the platform. The breath you are holding escapes in a ragged, silent gasp. He saw life, spirit, the ideal of an immortal. He did not see Arash. The grand lie of the Empire is even more powerful than you imagined. It is a lens that reshapes truth into what it desires. Your secret is safe, hidden by the very blindness you sought to defy. You slowly gather your tools, your movements stiff and clumsy. As you descend the great stairs of the Apodona, the construction site sprawls below you, a city of scaffolding and half-finished grandeur. But it looks different now. It is no longer a monument to a distant king, a place that consumed your brother. It has become a tombstone, the grandest in all the world, and you have carved the epitaph yourself. A single face among 10,000, watching over this place forever. You walk the dusty path back to the workers' barracks, the wooden bird a solid, comforting weight in your tunic. You are just another mason, tired and hungry, disappearing into the anonymous throng. But you carry a new burden now, heavier than any block of stone. It is the weight of a memory made real, the silence of a story told to no one, and the quiet, dangerous triumph of a single perfect scar. The barracks are a cacophony of sound and smell, the weary grunts of men easing onto straw mats, the clatter of wooden bowls, the thick aroma of lentil stew and sweat. It's a familiar world, one you've inhabited for years, yet tonight you feel utterly separate from it. You move through the throng like a sleepwalker, the men a blur of dusty tunics and tired faces. They see a mason hollow-eyed from the sun. They do not see the heretic who has etched his grief onto the king's monument. You find your small space, a patch of worn wool on the hard-packed earth. Your bowl of stew is tasteless, the coarse bread like sand in your mouth. Navid, his face still round with a youth that Arash never saw fade, settles beside you. "You were with the master a long time," he says, his voice low. "I saw him watching you on the platform. Everything all right?" Your heart seizes. You force a swallow. He was inspecting the new frieze. He found the work acceptable. You choose the word carefully, a pale shadow of the master's own praise. Navid nods, satisfied. He doesn't press. He knew Arash, laughed with him, but he doesn't carry the same wound. His grief is a simple, clean thing. Yours is now a complex machine of pride and terror. He starts talking about a loose block on the eastern wall, about the poor quality of the latest shipment of cedar from Lebanon, and you nod along, the words washing over you. Every nerve is screaming, wanting to tell him, to share the impossible burden. "Look, I did it! I made them see him!" But you choke the words down. A secret shared is a weapon in another's hand. The days that follow melt into a rhythm of avoidance. You take the long way around the Apadana, your eyes fixed on the ground, refusing to look up at the great stone staircase. You volunteer for the dirtiest jobs, mixing mortar, hauling water, anything that keeps you away from the delicate work of carving. You need the blunt, mindless exhaustion of it. It's the only thing that quiets the frantic whisper in your mind. But you cannot escape him. The image of the immortal guard is everywhere. It is the symbol of the king's power, a promise of eternal vigilance. You see it crudely stamped onto clay ration tablets, woven into the border of a satrap's tent, painted on the side of a merchant's wagon. Each time, it's a jolt. They are copying your work. The line of the jaw, the curve of the nostril, the subtle intensity of the gaze you poured into that stone. They are unknowingly replicating your tribute, turning Arash's memorial into a cheap emblem of the very empire that crushed him. The irony is a shard of glass in your gut. One evening, a ripple of excitement passes through the camp. A royal herald, his voice ringing with authority, announces that a great delegation from the rebellious Ionian cities is arriving to pay tribute. They are to be shown the majesty of Persepolis, to be awed into submission by the new constructions. They will gaze upon the might of the 10,000, the herald proclaims, and know the futility of defiance. A cold dread trickles down your spine. Strangers, foreigners, hundreds of them. They will walk past your carving. They will run their hands over the stone. Their shadows will fall across that tiny, perfect scar beneath the eye. Your secret, once a quiet thing between you and the stone, is about to be put on display for the world. You are no longer the keeper of a memory. You are the curator of a flaw in the heart of perfection, and the whole world is coming to see it. The air thickens the morning the Ionians arrive. It is not the usual dry heat of the plain, but a humidity of expectation and tension. From the scaffolding where you are mixing plaster, you see them. A river of blue and white robes flowing through the gate of all nations, so different from the deep crimsons and purples of the Persian court. They do not walk with the cowed reverence of other tributaries. Their heads are held high, their eyes restless and sharp, taking in everything, assessing, judging. These are not humbled subjects. They are shrewd merchants and proud philosophers forced into a performance of submission. And their gaze feels like 1,000 tiny drills aimed at the heart of the city. You try to lose yourself in your work, in the simple rhythmic scrape of the trowel, but you can't. Every cry of a guard, every peal of a distant trumpet tightens the knot in your stomach. Bogos finds you, his face an impassive mask. The satrap requires the grand stairway to be immaculate for the viewing. You will take a brush, see to the dust. It is not a request. It is a death sentence delivered with the mundane authority of a work order. Your blood runs cold. To be there, at the foot of the staircase, while those sharp Ionian eyes scan every inch of the stone. It is a trap. You want to refuse, to feign illness, but Bagos's gaze holds you fast. There is no choice. You move as if in a dream, your limbs heavy with dread. You kneel at the base of the carved procession, the fine stone dust cool against your knees. You can hear them now, the soft scuff of their leather sandals, the murmur of their strange musical tongue, mingling with the harsh gutturals of the Persian translators. You keep your head down, your world shrinking to the gray stone and the bristles of your brush. Sweep, sweep, don't look up. Let them be faceless shadows, passing sounds. But a shadow falls over you and stays. The murmuring stops. You feel a presence directly before your panel, the one bearing Arasha's face. You freeze, your hand hovering over the stone. Slowly, against every instinct screaming at you to lift your eyes. A man stands there, his beard streaked with gray, his blue robes finer than the others. He is their leader. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, are fixed on the immortal's face. He is so close he could reach out and trace the lines. He leans in, his brow furrowed, not in anger, but in intense concentration. This is it, the end. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. He says something in his own language. The translator, a stiff court official, intones the words for the listening satrap. He says, there is a strange humanity in this one, unlike the others. He claims he can see the shadow of many battles in the eyes. The satrap scoffs, a low, dismissive sound. It is stone, carved to a perfect standard of the king's eternal soldiers. There is nothing in it but strength. The Ionian does not seem to hear him. His gaze drifts down the stone face, past the firm line of the mouth, over the jaw. For a terrifying second, his eyes linger on the space just beneath the carved eye. Time stops. You hold your breath, certain he has seen it. But his focus moves on. He shakes his head slightly, a flicker of a smile on his lips, and murmurs something else, too quiet for the translator. Then he turns, and the procession moves on. You remain kneeling, trembling, the brush fallen from your numb fingers. He hadn't seen the scar. He had seen something deeper. He looked at the face of a perfect, unkillable soldier, a symbol of your oppression, and he saw a man. He saw the very thing you had tried to preserve for Arash. Your secret was safe, yet it had been told. The Ionian, a world away, had heard your silent whisper in the stone. The world rushes back in a torrent of sound. The distant chink of 100 other chisels, the rhythmic thud of mallets, the lowing of oxen dragging a new block of limestone up the ramp. The Ionian delegation is gone, swallowed by the palace's grandeur. You are just a worker again, kneeling in the dust, a forgotten cog in the vast imperial machine. But the air where the Ionian leader stood still feels charged, humming with the ghost of his presence. You finally force your fingers to close around the handle of your brush, the bristles stiff with stone dust. A shadow falls over you a second time. This one is familiar, sharp-edged and impatient. You don't have to look up to know it is Bahram, the overseer of the Masons, a man whose praise is as rare as rain in a desert winter. "On your feet, boy," he grunts. His voice is a low, gravelly thing, accustomed to barking orders that are never questioned. You scramble up, bowing your head, expecting a reprimand for your idleness. Instead, he gestures with his chin towards your panel. "That Greek, he stood here for a long time. What did he see?" His eyes, dark and suspicious, rake over your work. He is a master carver himself. If anyone could spot an anomaly, it is him. Your blood turns to ice water in your veins. I do not know, Master Bahram," you stammer, your voice a dry rasp. "He just looked. The Ionians are a strange people." You pray to Ahura Mazda that the lie is convincing, that your terror doesn't show on your face. Bahram squints, his gaze tracing the perfect lines of the immortal spear, the precise curl of his beard. He takes a step closer, his face inches from the stone. He sees nothing. Of course he sees nothing. He is looking for a flaw in the craft, an error in the pattern. He is not looking for humanity. "He saw perfection," Bahram declares finally, though it doesn't sound like a compliment. It sounds like a statement of fact, a confirmation of the Empire's might. He turns his hard gaze back to you. See that you do not invite such scrutiny again. Your work is to be part of the whole, not to stand out. He taps a stern finger on the uncarved panel next to yours. This one is to be finished by week's end. Do not fall behind. He moves on, his shadow sliding away, and you can breathe again. You pick up your tools and try to work, but your hands tremble. The Ionian saw something that was never meant to be seen. Bahram saw nothing but what he was supposed to see. Your secret, your tiny act of defiance, now feels like a shout in a library, a wild seed planted in the king's immaculate garden. When the horn finally blows to signal the end of the day, the sound is a mercy. You gather your tools, your movements stiff and clumsy. Before you turn to leave, you allow yourself one last look at Arash. The setting sun slants across the terrace, filling the shallow cuts of the relief with shadows. For a moment, with the light just so, the face seems to soften. The stone warrior looks weary. The Ionian's words echo in your mind. The shadow of many battles in the eyes. You did that. You gave a stone man a soul, and a stranger from across the sea had seen it. Joining the river of workers flowing down from the great platform, you keep your head down, just another tired body coated in a fine white dust. You pass two scribes, their robes cleaner than yours, their conversation carrying on the evening air. The Apadana reliefs are one thing, one says, but the new commission for the Eastern Gate, pure propaganda. The taming of the Saka, carvings of the rebels in chains, begging for the great king's mercy. His companion scoffs. It is a message. Let the Scythian envoys see it when they arrive. Let them see what happens to those who defy the King of Kings. The words strike you like a physical blow. You have just discovered that your art can speak, that it can whisper a human story across a gulf of language and culture. And now you know what the Empire will command you to make it say. You will be ordered to carve images of despair, to lend your skill to the glorification of conquest. As you walk away from the magnificence of Persepolis, its shadow stretches long behind you, and you feel the true weight of the chisel in your hand. It is not just a tool to shape stone. It is a tool to shape truth, and you are no longer sure which truths you will be forced to tell. The walk back to the workers' village is a blur of tired feet and swirling dust. The monumental gates of Persepolis shrink behind you, but their shadow seems to follow, a cool weight on your shoulders. The sounds of the camp greet you, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the polyglot chatter of men from every satrapy of the empire, the savory scent of roasting lamb. Usually, these sensations are a comforting blanket, the signal of an end to labor. Tonight, they are a discordant noise, an intrusion on the silent, roiling turmoil within you. You share a meal of bread and lentil stew with the other stonemasons, but you taste nothing. Their talk is of wages, of family back home, of the quality of a new shipment of limestone. You catch the eye of the old Mede who works on the floral friezes. He nods, a silent question in his gaze, but you look away, unable to share the burden of your discovery. How can you explain that you feel both powerful and powerless? That your chisel has become both a key and a shackle in the same day? The next morning, the dread you awoke with solidifies into reality. Bahram, the overseer, seeks you out as you are preparing your tools. He is not scowling today. In fact, his face is flush with a kind of self-important pride. Beside him stands one of the scribes from the archives, a man whose clean hands have never known the grit of stone dust. He carries a rolled parchment tube sealed with wax. "The king has seen your work on the Apadana," Bahram announces, his voice loud enough for others to hear and envy. "Your skill in the essence has been noted." He gestures to the scribe, who breaks the seal and unfurls the parchment on a flat-topped boulder. It is a master sketch, a design for a section of the new Eastern Gate. It is the taming of the Sakai. Your eyes trace the charcoal lines, and a cold sickness pools in your stomach. There they are, the rebel warriors from the eastern steppes, depicted not in the heat of a noble battle, but in the final, humiliating moments of defeat. They kneel in a line, their powerful limbs bound with thick ropes. Their heads are bowed, their long hair and beards matted with grime, their faces twisted in expressions of anguish and submission. The design is masterful in its cruelty, a perfect instrument of statecraft. A message to all who would dare defy the King of Kings, the scribe says, his voice smooth and academic. He taps a finger on the central figure, a man who must have been a chieftain. He is larger than the others, his face a canvas of broken pride. The satrap of Bactria requires this section to be completed with haste. The detail must be exquisite. Their despair must be palpable. Bahram points to you. You will carve the chieftain, his face. It is not a request. It is a command, an honor bestowed. To refuse is unthinkable, an act of treason. The scribe rolls the parchment back up and hands it to you. The paper feels brittle and cold, an artifact from a world of politics and power you never wanted to touch. You stand there, holding the sketch, the cheers of your fellow workers at your promotion sounding distant and hollow. You look down at the charcoal lines depicting a man's soul being crushed. You are being ordered to immortalize a lie, to portray this defeated warrior as nothing more than a broken symbol. But you remember the Ionian's words. You remember the secret weariness you carved into Arash. You now face a new block of stone, but the challenge is no longer merely technical. It is a battle for the truth you will choose to tell, a truth that could be buried in the grain, or one that could cost you your life. The parchment crackles in your grip. Your knuckles are white. The voices of your colleagues fade into the general hum of the construction site. the rhythmic clang of hammers, the groan of ropes, the grating of stone on stone. For a moment, it is all just noise. Bahram gives you a sharp, expectant nod before turning to his own duties, leaving you in the shadow of the half-finished gate. You are alone with your orders. You walk toward the designated block. It's a fine piece of limestone, pale and creamy, its surface smooth and cool to the touch. It is a blank page waiting for a story to be written upon it. Unrolling the parchment again, you study the chieftain's face. The artist rendered his despair with almost gleeful precision. The furrowed brow, the downturned mouth, the hollows of his cheeks. This is the face of a man utterly broken. This is the lie you are meant to make eternal. Your tool bag feels impossibly heavy as you set it down. You select a point chisel and a mallet. The first blows are always the hardest, breaking the perfect skin of the stone. You hesitate, the mallet held aloft. You are not just chipping away rock, you are chipping away at a man's identity, replacing it with a caricature of failure. You think of Arash, of the subtle weariness you carved into the corner of his eye, a truth so small it could be felt rather than seen. Could you do the same here? Not weariness. This man was no weary soldier. He was a leader, defiant to the end. Your decision is made not in a flash of courage, but in a quiet, hardening resolve. You will carve the despair they demand. You will bow his head. You will furrow his brow, but you will not break his spirit. You begin. The first chips fly, and you work to rough out the basic shape of the head, tilted in submission as the sketch dictates. You follow the lines meticulously, but as you move to the finer details, your chisel finds its own path. The instructions call for anguish. You carve pain, yes, but it is the pain of resistance, not surrender. You allow the muscle in his jaw to clench, a barely perceptible knot of defiance. You shape the lines around his eyes not as creases of defeat, but as the deep-worn marks of a man who has stared into the sun, a man who has shouldered immense responsibility. You will not give them the vacant, hollowed-out expression of a broken slave. Instead, beneath the agony, you carve a glimmer of something indestructible, a fierce, silent pride that lives in the bone, untouchable by rope or royal decree. Later in the afternoon, the scribe returns, his sandals silent on the dusty ground. He stands behind you, his shadow falling over your work. You don't stop, letting the rhythmic tap of your mallet fill the tense silence. "The satrap will be pleased," he says finally, his voice a dry rustle. "You capture his misery well. The agony is tangible." He sees only what he wants to see, what the design told him to expect. He sees the surface, the illusion you have so carefully constructed. He does not see the chieftain's secret. He does not see yours. As he walks away, you let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. You look back at the face emerging from the stone. It is a mask of submission, but you know the truth of the man beneath it. And for the first time, the chisel in your hand feels less like a burden and more like a weapon.
The seasons turn over Persepolis like the pages of a great book. The harsh sun of summer bleaches the limestone until it glares with the fury of Ahura Mazda's eye. And the brief, cool winters bring dust-choked winds from the plains. Your relief grows. The chieftain is long finished, one face among a growing procession of the conquered. You have carved Medes in their rounded hats, Babylonians with their square beards, and Ionians with their pleated tunics. With each figure, you grow bolder in your secret craft. Your current task is a line of Lydian tribute bearers famed for their wealth. They carry intricate armlets and vessels of gold. The master sketch demands they appear humbled, their eyes wide with awe at the grandeur of the King of Kings. You grant the scribes their awe, but you refuse them their submission. On one figure, you focus on the hands. Instead of a limp, defeated grip on the golden vessel, you carve tension into the knuckles. You make the fingers strong, possessive, as if to say, "This is ours, and we are only lending it to you." On another, you angle the head just so that while his gaze is directed toward the palace gate, it seems to pass just beyond it toward the distant mountains of his homeland. These are not slaves. They are diplomats under duress, men of stature forced into a humiliating role, and you ensure their stone effigies retain that truth. You begin to notice him after a few months. An older man, a Greek from Ionia, his face a road map of wrinkles carved by a different sun. He works on a parallel frieze, a depiction of the palace guard. He is a master. You can see it in the clean, confident lines of his work, the way he makes the rigid, repetitive forms of the Persian style breathe. He never speaks to you, but you feel his eyes on your work from time to time. You sense not judgment, but a keen, analytical interest. Is he a spy? Another artisan trying to steal a technique? The uncertainty gnaws at you. One morning, you find a small, dark piece of whetstone next to your tools, smoother and of a much finer grit than the coarse sandstone the overseers provide. You look over at the Ionian. He is already at work, his back to you, but you know the gift is from him. It is a silent gesture, an offering from one craftsman to another, a gesture of respect. That afternoon, driven by a new curiosity, you take a detour past his section. He is carving the intricate folds of a guardsman's robe. From a distance, it is perfect, conforming entirely to the imperial design. But as you draw closer, you see it. Tucked deep within the carved drapery, so small it could be an accidental slip of the chisel, is a tiny stylized owl, the symbol of Athens, the eternal rival of the Persians, a symbol of wisdom and defiance. It is a breathtaking risk, a hidden prayer, a joke spat in the face of the empire. You look up from the stone, your heart hammering against your ribs. The Ionian is watching you across the crowded, dusty terrace. His expression is unreadable, but his eyes hold yours for a long moment.
He gives a slow, deliberate nod, a gesture so slight it is almost nothing, but it is everything. In that instant, you understand. You are not alone. There is a silent conversation taking place all across this monument, a secret history being written in whispers of stone. Your chisel is no longer just your weapon. It is your voice in that silent, growing chorus. The walk back to your own frieze is a journey through a changed world. The relentless sun feels less like an oppressor and more like a spotlight, threatening to expose the secret knowledge now humming in your blood. The rhythmic tap, tap, tap of 1,000 hammers and chisels no longer sounds like the drudgery of empire building. It sounds like a code, a vast and scattered conversation you are suddenly able to hear. Every shadow seems to hold a secret. Every carved face seems to watch you with new meaning. The Ionian's nod has unlocked a door in your mind, and you can never close it again. Your own work, the procession of tribute bearers, feels hollow. You have been carving what you were told, replicating the sterile perfection of the imperial style. But now that is not enough. The gift of the whetstone, the revelation of the owl, they are a challenge, a silent dare. The fear is a cold knot in your stomach, but it is entangled with a fierce, burning need to answer. You spend the next 2 days in a state of heightened awareness, your mind racing as your hands perform their familiar tasks. You study the stone, searching for the perfect place. It cannot be obvious. It must be a secret shared only with those who know how to look. Your gaze settles on a section you will soon begin. The colossal figure of a lamassu, a winged bull with the calm, bearded face of a king that will guard a main doorway. Its mane is a riot of stylized curls, a dense forest of stone. Yes, there. A secret can be buried deep within a king's own majesty. When the time comes, your hands tremble. The symbol you choose is not one of defiance like the Ionian's owl. It is one of memory. You carve a fish no bigger than your thumbnail, its form sleek and simple. It is the fish that filled the nets in your village, the one your father taught you to scale and clean by the sea. It is the smell of salt and home, a memory more powerful than any empire. Your chisel feels clumsy, loud. Every scrape of metal on limestone sounds like a shout. An overseer walks his patrol along the terrace above, his shadow falling over you for a heart-stopping moment. You freeze, your body a statue of feigned casualness, your knuckles white on your tools. He moves on. With a final delicate tap, it is done. The fish swims forever in the stone curls of a Persian beast, a tiny, captured piece of your soul. Pulling back, you feel a wave of dizziness, a cocktail of terror and exhilaration. It is invisible, a meaningless scratch to the uninitiated, but to you, it is a landmark. It is a declaration. I was here. I remembered. Now that you have spoken the silent language, you see it everywhere. You notice a row of carved pomegranates where one, subtly, has the texture of a Lydian fig. You spot a pattern in the woven trousers of a Scythian archer that mimics the flow of the Nile. The grand monument to Darius is also a secret gallery for his subjects, a testament to the identities that refuse to be erased. This is how you survive. You do not just build the cage, you carve your names into its bars. A few days later, at the midday water distribution, you find yourself standing behind the Ionian. The line moves slowly under the oppressive heat. When he receives his leather skin of water, he turns, and for a moment you think he might speak. Instead, he simply holds it out to you, gesturing for you to drink first. It is an unusual gesture of deference from an older master craftsman. As you take it, your fingers brush against his. His thumb presses down for a fraction of a second, and you feel it. A small, raised shape on the leather. A familiar, simple form. A fish. Your heart stutters. He knows. He saw. He gives you another of his unreadable looks, the barest hint of a smile in his eyes, and turns away. You are no longer just an apprentice. You are a member of the chorus. The water from the Ionian skin is cool against your sun-scorched throat, but it's the silent acknowledgement that truly quenches a deeper thirst. The world has not changed. The sun is still a hammer, the air is still thick with limestone dust, and the rhythmic chip-chip-chip of 1,000 chisels still fills the sky. But you have changed. Your perception has been retuned, sharpened to a frequency you never knew existed. The great monument is no longer a singular, monolithic statement of imperial power. It is a conversation, and you have just learned your first word. His name, you learn, not from his lips, but from the whispers of others, is Phanes. He seeks you out a day later, not with words, but with a slight jerk of his head. You follow him to a less trafficked section of the terrace, where the reliefs depict Median nobles in their round felt hats. He doesn't speak. He simply raises a worn chisel and points to the intricate leatherwork on a noble's boot. He taps a particular knot in the lacing, a complex twist of stone you had previously dismissed as mere ornamentation. He taps it twice, then meets your eyes. It takes you a moment to place it. A sailor's knot, the kind used to moor fishing boats against the fickle tides of the Aegean. A knot from his home. He gives a slow, single nod. The lesson is over. Your apprenticeship takes on a new dimension. You still learn to shape an acanthus leaf, to define the muscle of a bull, to carve the 23 distinct curls of a royal beard. But now you conduct a second secret study. During your breaks, you no longer seek the shade to rest. You walk the length of the growing city, a pilgrim in a temple of your own making. Your eyes devour the stone, searching for the subtle dialect of the displaced. And you find it. You find the barely perceptible wave pattern on a Cindy's sash, the exact curve of the Zagros Mountains, hidden in the folds of a Mede's cloak. A tiny cuneiform sign for return, concealed in the geometric frieze of a Babylonian's robe. Each discovery is a jolt, a silent greeting from a stranger across time and distance. You are not alone. Your own work improves dramatically. Your hands, now guided by a deeper purpose, move with a newfound confidence. The foreman, a severe man named Artazastre, notices. He watches you for a week, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. You feel his gaze like a physical weight, and you ensure your chisel work is flawless, your secret mark buried deep and insignificant. One morning, he pulls you aside. He does not praise you. Praise is not his way. He simply points toward the grand eastern staircase, the ceremonial heart of the Apadana. You will work there, he says, the Elamite delegation. Do not shame my selection. Your breath catches in your chest. The Apadana staircase is the grandest stage of all, the procession of nations frozen in stone for eternity. You are being given a voice on the main page, not hidden in the margins. You stand before the massive, prepared block of limestone assigned to you. An Elamite tribute bearer, his hand resting on the head of a powerful lioness. The creature is tense, its stone muscles coiled, a symbol of a conquered but still proud people. The responsibility is immense, but so is the opportunity. Your tools feel heavy in your sweating palms. You look from the charcoal sketch to the waiting stone, your heart hammering a rhythm of fear and defiance. The whole world will see this lioness, but what secret will you teach her to speak? The sun beats down on the terrace, but you feel a chill. The block of limestone is a pale, silent mountain before you. Its surface is smooth, prepared by lesser hands, waiting for you to give it a voice. Around you, the Apadana construction site is a cacophony of organized chaos. The rhythmic clinking of 100 chisels, the grating sound of blocks being dragged on rollers, the shouted commands in a dozen languages. But in the bubble of your concentration, all of it fades to a dull roar. The only sound that matters is the whisper of the stone, waiting for your first cut. You begin. The first days are pure labor, grunt work that carves the sweat from your brow. You use the heavy mallet and the pointed punch chisel, knocking off large chunks, roughing out the general shape. The formless block slowly yields the ghost of a man and a beast. It is a battle of will, you against the stone's inertia. Each swing of the mallet sends a shockwave up your arm, and by evening, your muscles scream in protest. Artazastre watches you from a distance, his shadow falling over your work at unexpected moments. He says nothing, which is somehow more unnerving than his sharpest critique. He is looking for weakness, for hesitation. Your fear is a constant companion. The secret messages you carved before were small, hidden in the folds of a robe or the background of a relief. But this is the centerpiece. The tribute bearers are a testament to the king's power, each nation bringing its finest, submitting to Persian rule. The lioness is meant to be a symbol of Elam's wild strength, now tamed and brought to heel. To alter that message is treason whispered in stone. A simple glyph, a hidden pattern, it's too obvious here. Your work will be scrutinized by Artazastre, by priests, by architects, perhaps even by the great king himself. How can you speak your truth when the world is listening so closely? You find your answer not in the stone, but in the flesh. During your midday meal, you watch a group of Elamite laborers sharing a piece of flatbread. They are subjects, their homeland a satrapy, but they do not carry themselves like broken men. There is a pride in the set of their jaws, a coiled energy in their posture. Later, you see one of them gently soothe a nervous pack horse, his hand firm but respectful on its neck. He is not commanding the animal, he is making an accord with it. He acknowledges its power, and in doing so, asserts his own quiet strength. In that moment, you understand. The secret will not be a symbol carved on the lioness. It will be the lioness herself. You return to your block with a new fire in your soul. Your tools change. You set aside the heavy mallet for lighter ones. Your chisels become finer, more precise. You begin to work on the details, and the lioness begins to breathe. Where the design calls for a placid, defeated beast, you carve tension. The paw beneath the Elamite's hand is not relaxed. You give it the subtle suggestion of weight, the claws not extended, but held ready just beneath the stone skin. You refine the muscles of her powerful shoulders, not slack in submission, but gathered, as if for a spring that will never come. The greatest risk you take is with her head. Instead of casting her eyes to the ground, you turn her muzzle a fraction of a degree outward. Her gaze is not on the stairs or the bearer's feet. It is fixed on the distant horizon, eastward, toward the plains of Susa. It is a look of longing, of memory, of unbroken spirit. It is the most defiant act of your life, hidden in millimeters of stone. Artazastra stops by one afternoon, his eyes tracing the lines of the beast. You brace yourself. He runs a calloused finger along the lioness's jawline. There is life in it, he grunts, his voice low. See that you do not give it too much. He walks away, leaving you with a pounding heart and the knowledge that your whisper has been heard, even if it is not yet understood. The final phase of the work is dust and repetition. You spend days polishing the stone, using fine sand and leather to bring a subtle sheen to the limestone. The sun beats down on the grand stairway, making the figures shimmer in the heat haze. Every time you smooth the flank of the lioness, you feel the tension coiled within the stone, a secret your own hands have buried. The fear that was once a sharp blade in your gut has dulled to a heavy, constant weight. You have made your statement. Now you can only wait for the verdict. The verdict arrives sooner than you expect, not with a chisel's tap, but with the tramp of military sandals. A rumor carried on the dry wind becomes a reality. A royal inspector, a cousin to the great king himself, has come from Susa to see the progress. Work halts. An unnatural quiet falls over the terrace, broken only by the snapping of banners and the low commands of the guards. You and the other artisans are herded to the side, instructed to kneel and not meet the inspector's gaze. You risk a glance from beneath your lashes. The inspector is a tall man,
his beard meticulously oiled and plaited with gold thread. He moves with an unnerving stillness, his eyes missing nothing. He is flanked by scribes and soldiers, a walking embodiment of the Empire's unblinking eye. He walks slowly along the frieze, his shadow falling across the delegations of Medes, Babylonians, and Lydians. Then he stops. He stops directly in front of your panel. The sun feels impossibly hot on the back of your neck. You can hear your own blood roaring in your ears. The inspector raises a hand, and a servant hands him a piece of soft linen. He doesn't speak to Artazostra, who kneels nearby, stiff as a statue. Instead, the inspector himself wipes the fine layer of dust from the lioness's head. His fingers, surprisingly slender, trace the line of her jaw, the defiant set of her muzzle. He leans closer, his own dark eyes just inches from the beast's carved ones. It feels like an eternity. He is not just looking at the stone, he is reading it. Then he straightens up. He turns not to your master, but looks out over the assembled workers, his gaze sweeping across the kneeling figures. His eyes find yours for a fleeting, terrifying second. A flicker of something unreadable passes through them. Not anger, not approval, but a cold, sharp understanding. He gives a single curt nod to his captain, turns without a word, and continues down the line. The moment he is gone, the air rushes back into your lungs. The tension on the terrace breaks. Artazostra gets to his feet, his face pale. He walks over to you, his expression grim. He doesn't reprimand you. He doesn't praise you. He simply places a heavy hand on your shoulder, squeezes once hard, and says, "Back to work. The stone does not polish itself." As he walks away, you look back at your lioness, her gaze still fixed on the horizon. The secret is no longer yours alone. It has been seen. And for now, in the silent, sun-drenched heart of the Empire, it has been allowed to remain. Find a quiet space, just for a moment. Close your eyes and feel the ground beneath you, a steady, ancient presence. Let each breath you take be a gentle brushstroke, clearing the canvas of your mind. Now, imagine the air around you growing warm, dry, and filled with the faint, sweet scent of distant date palms and sun-baked earth. The hum of the present day softens, replaced by a profound silence, a quiet that has held the secrets of millennia. This is the silence of the high Persian plateau. Feel it settle over you, a blanket woven from starlight and time. You are not just remembering history, you are about to walk within it. Let go and let the sands of time carry you back to the very beginning of a world-shaping dream. The dust of the road clings to your leather sandals and the hem of your linen tunic. For days, your world has been the rhythmic plodding of your donkey and the vast, empty sky arching over the plains of Persis. But now, something new rises from the horizon.